Okay, hello everyone. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial, but here I am. And so I'm going to do a tutorial today on how to create walk cycles. Not just how to create walk cycles, but the methodology of creating a walk cycle. So I'm going to use leave the artistry of creating a walk cycle out of this. I'm just going to go ahead and show you the methods I use to create walk cycles. So I use two basic methods of creating a walk cycle, and I'll tell you that as I put the character into a basic starting pose here. And I'm not really paying attention to the physics so much of creating a walk cycle as I am just going to show you the method I use to do these. So the methodology for creating a walk cycle I found comes down to two basic ideas, or one basic idea done two different ways. One is moving the character by moving the pelvis of the character, and the other methodology is going into object mode and moving the armature, the entire armature, all at once. All right, there's a definite benefit and drawback to each method. I'm going to go into pose mode here, and the first method I'm going to show you is moving the pelvis of the character, the pelvis methodology, I'll call it. And the other one, the one using object mode, I guess object mode methodology, or center of gravity methodology. So the advantage of moving the pelvis is that when I do move the pelvis, you can see here that that plant foot, this plant foot here, it stays perfectly locked in place. And also I'll know that I can only move so far in a stride at one time, because if I start moving too far forward, my feet will stretch out of me. So if I move this forward to the point where this leg is just about at its stretching point and move the other leg forward. Okay, now I'll know that I now have a good stride length. So the advantage to using the pelvis first methodology is that the plant foot stays locked and the stride length is very consistent with the actual walk. And let's go ahead and move her back. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. We'll do a little rudimentary bit of a walk here. So I'm going to select everything that I need to key and hit I. I'm going to key the location and rotation. I don't care about the scale so much. And then we'll move forward 12 frames. That's about what an average walk is. And I'll, again, stretch her out. And then I'll move this back foot forward to the front. And I'll just move that pelvis until her knees and everything are bent in a kind of a realistic manner. So you'll see here that I know that I can't really go forward any farther. So already my stride length and my plant foot are taken care of automatically with this method. All right, so I'll just go ahead and keyframe everything. Go to frame 7 and create like the up pose, the passing pose for the back foot. All right, so as you can see here, we're already getting into, it's very easy to create a walk cycle with this method. So this has obviously quite a few advantages, which is that, you know, like I said, you get a realistic stride length without any kind of weird math or anything like that, and you get also the plant leg is, the plant leg is taken care of kind of automatically. All right. Again, make sure to put keyframes at the end of your key poses here. Otherwise, this thing's going to slide around the next time you move it. The disadvantage to this one is that if we go back into object mode, you'll see here that we're getting like this bone here. I call this the kind of the main mover bone. This is the center of gravity of my character. So as you can see here, when we started back, this center of gravity is right in the middle hip of my character. So if I were to move forward and later on, let's say this character needs to like jump and spin in the air or something like that, if I want to go into object mode and move her with this center of gravity here, it's way off balance. And if I were to move her forward some more, let's go to 24 and create another stride here real quickly. you can see that we're actually getting farther and farther away from this center of gravity. Now, depending on what kind of shot you're animating, that might not be any problem whatsoever, but it could cause a lot of chaos later on. What you could do is, to overcome this, is maybe, since you're just animating the pelvis as the main point of this character, and you're leaving this center of gravity behind, you could just kind of like, just forget about the center of gravity, stay in pose mode the entire time, and just when you do need to have the character kind of flip and stuff like that, you could go in and turn off your IK. You could go ahead and select the bones that do have the IK and turn off the influence for that. In my case, since I'm using this reverse foot rig, you can see that can cause some issues, but it's doable. All right, so that is one methodology. All right, let's reload it, and now I'll show you the other methodology. All right, so the other methodology is moving the entire armature at one time, in object mode. So let's go into object mode and set a keyframe. All right, and then we'll move to frame 12, and we'll move her forward. All right, let's go back and create a into pose mode and create a little bit of a walk start pose here. Again, we don't really care about the physics of the walk per se. All right, so now as you can see here, she's just kind of sliding along. So immediately we're having an issue because we don't know the kind of the stride length. We could go and manually move this bone into place and kind of hope that it matches up with the stride length, this plant leg, for example. But as you can see, it's kind of difficult to figure out what that stride length is going to be. So what I do is I just go ahead, and you have to do this in object mode. You can't add things when you're in pose mode. So go into object mode and hit Shift-A to bring up the add menu. And I just go ahead and create an empty. And I create, for example, like a cube, for example. I just move it into place here, scale it down. All right. And I put it like right at the root of that foot and make sure that it's over there so I can see it. Again, we're not concerned about what this walk cycle looks like at this point. All right, so then I'll go ahead and select my armature and tab into pose mode. And now, with this plant leg selected, I'll just go forward to the end of my stride. Let's move that leg forward just to get out of the way. All right, frame 12, and I'll just move it back to the center of that empty. So the empty is just there as a guide. Okay. So now you can see that that stride length is much more in line with what you would expect. Okay. Now you may see this thing moving, sliding around, kind of as it moves. It may kind of slide back and forth and whatnot. So what you could do is make sure that you select those two keyframes for the planted foot, and in the dope sheet, just go ahead and hit T to bring up the keyframe interpolation panel, and hit linear as the interpolation type. Oops. And depending on what you do, it may cause issues like this. It depends on if you're getting that or not. Let's go back to Bezier. Okay. If it does cause those sliding issues, you could also select, go into object mode to select your entire armature rig and go into the graph editor, zoom in on it, and you'll see the keyframes here are in this Bezier interpolated mode. So just go ahead and select those and hit T and hit linear. All right, and then they'll match up better. So go back into pose mode for this. Go back to the dope sheet and T for linear. All right, now they're both matching up. Okay. Again, this linear and Bezier interpolation thing is something you're going to have to play with depending on how you've animated it and whatnot. But if you do see that this plant leg is kind of sliding back and forth as you scrub through the frames, it's the interpolation mode that you have to mess with. All right? And like I said, this methodology here is a bit more difficult to deal with as far as getting the plant foot really planted and also to estimate the stride length. You kind of have to play around with it and figure out what the stride length is going to be. Because, but the advantages to this mode is that, again, when you do go into edit mode or object mode and stuff, you can see here that the center of gravity is still in the center of the character. And you can do a lot more kind of like acrobatic moves with the character. Also, if you're just kind of planning out your shots, a lot of times what you want to do is move the entire character's all at once and plot out the course of the timing of the character as a whole instead of each bone individually. Let me load up a shot here I've been working on in a second, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here is a shot that I was working on, and as you can see here, if I just kind of like scrub through it, this shot's not completely done, of course, but I don't want to give away too much. But anyway, as you can see here, she's walking, and this shot I used the center of gravity method, not the pelvis method, because what I wanted to do was kind of, I just slid her around in object mode to get the timing of this walk and everything right. And then I started blocking in the keyframes for the walk. And as you can see here, I used the method of putting the empty here, and you can see the empty just stays in place as a placeholder. And actually, the feet and everything stayed in place pretty well, even though the reason why I used this method was to help out with the blocking, but also, as you can see here in the camera view, all this is off camera. This is all the camera's actual view. So you can see that it kind of cuts off right at her ankle. So I wasn't concerned so much about the slipping and stuff. Otherwise, I probably would use the pelvis mode. But this is the reasoning, why you would use one mode or the other over the other is what's the goal of your shot, how are you going to do things, and which one is going to accomplish what you want best. All right, so those two methodologies, there's probably many more out there, so I'd be willing to see what you guys think about which one is best and what mode you use to block out your walk cycles. So I hope this tutorial helps you out and gets you creating.